At first, it disguises itself as something reasonable. "You deserve to be happy," it whispers. "Your needs should come first." And so, where once two stood as one, now stand two individuals, each drawing a line in the sand, guarding their own interests, and silently resenting the other for not crossing over. This spirit, the spirit of self-centeredness, has become the silent destroyer of marriages. It turns the union of love into a battlefield of pride. It replaces patience with irritation, devotion with demand, and forgiveness with scorekeeping. Love, my friends, was never meant to be a fleeting emotion that comes and goes with the wind. Yet this enemy convinces us that love is only real when it is effortless, when it serves us, when it asks nothing in return. And so, at the first sign of struggle, many abandon ship, believing they have outgrown the love they once swore to uphold. Worse still, this spirit takes hold of the tongue, twisting words into weapons. Small grievances become grand offenses. Silence replaces understanding. Coldness settles in where once there was warmth. And all the while the enemy rejoices, for a house divided against itself cannot stand. But, dear friends, there is a remedy to this affliction, though it is not an easy one. It is the virtue of humility, the discipline of self-sacrifice, the power of forgiveness. A marriage is not a contract of convenience, but a covenant of endurance. It is not built upon the shifting sands of emotions, but upon the bedrock of daily, deliberate love. To those who have felt this spirit at work in their own homes, know this: you are not powerless against it. True love is a choice, and every day you must choose to fight for it. Do not let the whispers of selfishness, resentment, or pride dictate the story of your union. Stand guard, resist the enemy, and build a love that no storm can shake. Marriage is not merely a legal contract between two individuals. It is a sacred covenant, an entity forged not only in love but in commitment, sacrifice, and perseverance. Yet, for all its beauty and potential for joy, marriage exists within a battlefield, a place where unseen forces conspire to dismantle what was meant to be unbreakable. The destruction of a marriage rarely happens overnight. More often than not, it is the result of a slow erosion, an imperceptible decay that begins long before either spouse recognizes its presence. The first and most dangerous weapon of this unseen enemy is doubt. It does not come with a sudden, overwhelming force, but rather in whispers. "Perhaps you married the wrong person," it suggests. "Maybe this is not what you thought it would be." A single doubt, if entertained long enough, can grow into full-blown discontent. The enemy does not need to shout or force its way into a marriage. It only needs to sow the smallest seed of uncertainty. The human mind, if not guarded, will nurture that doubt, water it with insecurities, and soon a chasm will form where once there was unity. Next, this force introduces comparison. The spouse who was once seen as the embodiment of love and companionship is now measured against impossible standards. Why doesn't she support you the way others do? Why isn't he as attentive as he once was? Social media, television, and even well-meaning friends can become the tools through which dissatisfaction is fueled. A person who constantly compares their partner to an idealized version of love, one that does not demand patience, forgiveness, or effort, will soon see their spouse as lacking. The enemy then turns to the subtle art of distraction. At first, love requires nothing more than presence, time, and effort. But as life progresses, responsibilities grow, careers demand attention, and external interests begin to divide the couple's focus. What was once intentional, such as setting aside time to nurture the relationship, is now neglected in favor of fleeting priorities. The excuse is always the same: "I'll make time later." But later never comes. And so, Two people who once built their world around each other now live as strangers under the same roof, their connection slowly fraying under the weight of busyness and neglect. Once distance sets in, the enemy capitalizes on the wounded pride of both partners. Small misunderstandings, which could have been resolved with humility, now turn into bitter conflict. The spirit of self-righteousness creeps in, convincing both individuals that they are the injured party, the ones who have been wronged. Apologies are withheld, walls are built, and silence replaces affection. Where love once sought reconciliation, pride now demands justice. This is how the unseen battle turns a loving marriage into a cold war. In the midst of this battle, another powerful tactic is used: justification. Instead of seeing their own faults, individuals begin to justify their actions while magnifying the flaws of their partner. The enemy whispers, "You're not the problem." They are. You have done everything you could. It's their turn to change. This shift in perspective makes true resolution impossible. The more one insists on their innocence and refuses to acknowledge their own shortcomings, the deeper the divide grows. Temptation is then introduced as the final assault. It does not always come in the form of another person. Sometimes it is the temptation to escape. The fantasy of a life free from responsibility, the illusion of a fresh start, the lie that happiness exists just beyond the bounds of commitment, these are the thoughts that begin to take root. The enemy does not need to convince a person to walk away. It only needs to make them believe that they deserve better elsewhere. At its core, the unseen battle is not fought with weapons or grand betrayals, but with subtle thoughts, gradual changes, and small compromises. No marriage is immune to it. The only way to resist is through vigilance, through the recognition that love is not a passive emotion, but an active battle against forces that seek to divide. Those who understand this battle can stand firm, guarding their marriage with intention, humility, and unwavering commitment. Those who do not recognize it may one day wake up to find their once solid foundation reduced to rubble, wondering how it ever came to this. At the heart of every failing marriage, there is a subtle yet powerful force at work, one that whispers, persuades, and ultimately convinces individuals that their happiness, their needs, and their desires must take precedence above all else. This force is the spirit of self-centeredness, a silent destroyer that does not announce its arrival with grand gestures, but infiltrates the marriage in the smallest, most unsuspecting ways. In the early days of a relationship, love is often expressed in selflessness. Both partners eagerly put the other's needs above their own, finding joy in small sacrifices and mutual care. The idea of self-centeredness seems distant, almost unthinkable. But as time passes, as routine settles in, and as personal expectations remain unmet, the whispers begin. Why should you always be the one to compromise? Why does your happiness come second? You deserve more. At first, these thoughts appear harmless, just simple reflections of personal needs. But in reality, they mark the beginning of a dangerous shift in perspective, one that places the individual above the union. Once self-centeredness takes root, it manifests in expectations. Where love once sought to give freely, it now demands to receive. Small acts of kindness that were once appreciated become expected. Why should I say thank you? They should do that for me anyway. Why should I express love first? They should prove it to me. Over time, love that once thrived on gratitude and mutual care turns into a ledger of unfulfilled obligations, where each partner measures what they give against what they receive. This spirit then attacks the willingness to serve. Acts of love that once felt natural now seem burdensome. Helping with a task, listening with patience, or offering emotional support no longer come from a place of desire but obligation. The mind begins to reason, I do so much already. Why should I do more? Resentment slowly builds, And with each unnoticed effort, frustration replaces affection. Instead of two people working together in harmony, they become opponents, each waiting for the other to carry their share of the weight. Self-centeredness does not always manifest in grand selfishness. It often appears in subtle forms: emotional withdrawal, passive neglect, or silent expectations. One partner may withhold affection as a form of punishment, believing that their needs should be met before they offer love in return. Another may become overly focused on personal ambitions, believing that success or self-fulfillment justifies neglecting their spouse. These actions, though small in isolation, accumulate over time, creating emotional distance that neither partner fully understands until it is too late. Pride strengthens the grip of self-centeredness. When conflicts arise, it refuses to admit fault. It insists on being right, on being heard, on being justified. Instead of seeking reconciliation, it seeks victory. The idea of apologizing or compromising feels like surrender, as though humility is a weakness rather than a virtue. Conversations become battles, and what should have been simple misunderstandings turn into deeply ingrained conflicts, fueled by an unwillingness to yield. Another dangerous effect of self-centeredness is the gradual loss of empathy. The struggles, fears, and needs of the spouse no longer seem as important as one's own. When a person becomes too absorbed in their own hardships, they fail to recognize the burdens their partner carries. I have my own problems. They can deal with theirs. This lack of empathy creates emotional isolation where both partners feel unseen and unheard. The connection that once brought them together slowly fades, replaced by loneliness within the very relationship that was meant to provide companionship. Expectations soon turn into entitlement. The small joys of marriage, shared moments, affection, kindness, are no longer seen as gifts, but as things owed. If a spouse fails to meet these expectations, frustration turns into blame. They never appreciate me. They don't love me the way they used to. The focus shifts entirely to what is lacking rather than what is present. Gratitude disappears, and in its absence, dissatisfaction grows. As self-centeredness deepens, love begins to feel conditional. Acts of affection are given only when deserved. Kindness is extended only when it benefits the giver, and appreciation is offered only when expectations are met. The marriage becomes transactional, a constant exchange of emotional bargaining rather than a foundation of unconditional commitment. Love, which once flourished in sacrifice, now suffocates under the weight of selfishness. The spirit of self-centeredness convinces individuals that they are the ones who deserve better, that they are the victims, that their needs should come first. It blinds them to their own shortcomings while magnifying those of their spouse. It whispers that they have given enough, that they have endured too much, that they owe nothing more. And once this belief takes hold, the marriage, once built on love and unity, begins to collapse under the weight of unfulfilled desires and misplaced priorities. Modern love has been redefined, reshaped, and repackaged into something far removed from its true nature. What was once a covenant of endurance and devotion has been turned into a fleeting emotion, a temporary high that comes and goes with convenience. The deception lies in the idea that love should always be effortless, that the presence of struggle or sacrifice is a sign that something is wrong. It convinces people that when love becomes difficult, it is no longer love at all. The first deception is the idea that love is purely a feeling. In the early days of romance, emotions run high and affection comes easily. Every interaction feels magical, and both individuals are eager to please and accommodate. But over time, as routine settles in and imperfections become visible, that initial spark begins to fade. Modern thinking suggests that when this happens, the love itself has disappeared. The truth, however, is that love is not the absence of hardship but the commitment to endure through it. This deception has been fueled by media, literature, and entertainment, which portray love as an endless stream of passion and excitement. Relationships in movies and novels are often built on grand gestures, dramatic confessions, and idealized moments. Conflict, when it arises, is brief and always followed by immediate resolution. In reality, true love is not sustained by spectacle, but by consistency, by the quiet, daily choices to care for one another, even when emotions wane. Another dangerous aspect of modern love's deception is the belief in the perfect partner. The idea that somewhere out there exists a flawless soulmate has led many to abandon relationships at the first sign of dissatisfaction. When imperfections surface, the mind begins to wander. Maybe I chose the wrong person. Maybe someone else will make me happier. The search for perfection is endless because perfection does not exist. Every person, no matter how compatible, comes with flaws, and every relationship requires effort. The deception also places an unhealthy emphasis on self-fulfillment. Love is now measured not by mutual sacrifice, but by personal happiness. The question is no longer, how can I strengthen this relationship? But rather, what am I getting out of this? If a marriage demands too much, if it requires patience, compromise, or self-denial, the modern mindset sees it as a burden rather than a bond. But love, in its truest form, has always been about giving, about choosing another above oneself, about finding fulfillment in the well-being of the other. This twisted view of love encourages people to place conditions on their affection. I will love you as long as you meet my expectations. I will stay with you as long as you make me happy. Love is no longer seen as a covenant but a contract, something to be upheld only when it is convenient. The problem with conditional love is that it crumbles under the weight of imperfection. The moment expectations are not met, frustration sets in, and the foundation of the relationship begins to crack. Another consequence of this deception is the normalization of emotional detachment. Instead of working through problems, people are encouraged to distance themselves, to protect their peace, rather than engage in the difficult work of reconciliation. The modern mindset glorifies independence to the extent that dependence, even the healthy kind that marriage requires, is seen as weakness. The result is that when conflict arises, instead of drawing closer, couples drift apart, each retreating into their own world rather than fighting for unity. The deception also cultivates an unrealistic fear of struggle. Disagreements, disappointments, and moments of discontent are seen not as natural aspects of a relationship, but as warning signs of incompatibility. This mindset fosters impatience. Instead of learning to work through differences, people become restless, looking for an escape rather than a solution. Love is abandoned not because it is broken, but because it requires effort to maintain. Perhaps the most dangerous lie of modern love is that separation is always a path to greater happiness. The idea that walking away is the only way to reclaim joy convinces many to leave marriages that could have been saved. In reality, relationships that endure are not those that never face hardship, but those that refuse to surrender to it. The happiest couples are not the ones who never struggle, but the ones who choose to fight through their struggles together. Modern love teaches that marriage is about finding someone who completes you, someone who effortlessly meets your needs. But true love is not about completion, it is about growth. It is not about finding someone who makes life easy, but about choosing someone with whom you are willing to face life's difficulties. The deception of modern love has convinced many that the hard moments in marriage are signs that love is fading. In truth, they are the very opportunities through which love is strengthened. Communication is the lifeblood of a marriage, the bridge that connects two hearts, two minds, and two lives. When it flourishes, understanding grows, intimacy deepens, and conflicts find resolution. But when it begins to erode, the entire foundation of the relationship weakens. The destruction of communication does not happen in an instant. It is a slow, creeping process, often unnoticed until the damage is severe. The first sign of this destruction is assumption. Where there was once curiosity and openness, assumption takes its place. Instead of asking, "What's wrong?" or "How can I help?" a spouse assumes they already know. They believe they understand the thoughts, intentions, and motives of their partner without ever seeking clarity. This assumption leads to misinterpretation. A moment of silence is mistaken for disinterest. A stressful day is perceived as coldness. Over time, small misunderstandings accumulate, creating invisible walls between two people who once shared everything. Pride plays a significant role in communication breakdown. When pride enters, the desire to be understood overshadows the need to understand. Conversations turn into competitions, where each partner fights not to listen but to be heard. Words become weapons, and discussions that should bring resolution only deepen wounds. Instead of seeking truth, each person seeks validation for their own perspective, making meaningful dialogue impossible. Another factor that destroys communication is unspoken expectations. Every individual enters marriage with certain hopes, desires, and beliefs about how love should be expressed. Some expect frequent verbal affirmation, while others value acts of service. Some desire deep conversations, while others find comfort in quiet companionship. When these expectations go unexpressed, frustration builds. "They should know what I need. If they really loved me, they would understand." But love is not mind reading. Without clear communication, one partner may feel neglected, while the other remains completely unaware of the dissatisfaction growing in the heart of their spouse. Resentment festers in the silence between words. Small offenses, left unaddressed, grow into deep-seated grudges. What could have been resolved with a simple conversation becomes an ongoing source of bitterness. The more resentment lingers, the harder it becomes to speak freely. One or both partners may begin filtering their words, withholding their true thoughts for fear of reigniting conflict. Instead of honest dialogue, communication becomes superficial, a series of polite but empty exchanges that do little to maintain emotional connection. The destruction of communication also manifests in defensiveness. When one partner tries to express a concern, the other immediately responds with justification or counter-accusations. Instead of listening, they prepare their defense, ready to explain why they are not at fault. "You never listen to me." "Well, you don't make time for me either." Conversations become battlegrounds, where neither side wins because neither side is truly heard. The more this pattern repeats, the less safe it feels to express emotions, leading to emotional withdrawal. Technology has become a modern enemy of meaningful communication. While it has the power to connect people across great distances, it also creates distance between those who are physically close. Couples sit in the same room but engage more with screens than with each other. Moments that could be spent in conversation are instead given to scrolling, texting, or engaging with a digital world that demands attention but offers no real intimacy. The result is a quiet disconnect, a slow fading of meaningful interaction replaced by passive coexistence. One of the most devastating effects of communication breakdown is the shift from we to me. When communication is strong, decisions are made together and challenges are faced as a team. But as dialogue diminishes, partners begin making choices independently, prioritizing personal desires over shared goals. Instead of thinking, "How will this affect us?" the thought becomes, "What do I want?" This mindset creates isolation, turning a marriage from a partnership into two individuals living separate lives under the same roof. Unresolved conflicts deepen the communication divide. Many couples fall into the habit of avoiding difficult conversations, believing that silence is better than confrontation. But silence does not heal wounds, it allows them to fester. What is left unsaid does not disappear, it lingers beneath the surface, influencing actions, emotions, and attitudes. Over time, avoidance leads to distance, and distance leads to disconnection. The final stage of communication breakdown is indifference. In the beginning, silence may be a sign of caution, a hesitation to speak for fear of conflict. But if left unchecked, it turns into apathy. The desire to fix the relationship fades. The energy once put into resolving issues is replaced by emotional exhaustion. Conversations become transactional, limited to necessities rather than connection. At this point, the marriage may still exist in form, but in spirit, it has already begun to dissolve. Communication is not merely about talking, it is about understanding, about bridging the gap between two different minds and hearts. When it is lost, everything else in a marriage begins to unravel. The slow destruction of communication is one of the most common and dangerous threats to a marriage, not because it arrives with sudden force, but because it erodes love in silence, leaving two people wondering how they became strangers to one another. Comparison is a silent destroyer of marriages, creeping in unnoticed and corroding the foundation of love. It begins with subtle thoughts, seemingly harmless observations, and small dissatisfactions that, left unchecked, turn into deep resentment. The moment one partner begins measuring their spouse against another, whether a friend's husband, a colleague's wife, or even an illusionary ideal from social media, the seeds of discontent are sown. One of the first ways comparison poisons a marriage is through unrealistic expectations. Every individual enters a relationship with certain ideas about what a spouse should be like. These expectations are often shaped by culture, upbringing, and external influences. When a spouse does not fit the idealized image, the mind begins to wander. Why can't they be more romantic like my friend's husband? Why don't they take care of themselves like that other person does? Instead of appreciating who their spouse is, they focus on who they are not. Social media has intensified this problem, creating a false reality that many unknowingly use as a standard for their own marriage. Couples post carefully curated moments, romantic vacations, extravagant gifts, affectionate gestures, but rarely show the struggles, disagreements, or mundane aspects of daily life. Those who consume this content begin to believe that their own marriage is lacking. They compare their ordinary moments to someone else's highlights, failing to realize that what they see is not the full picture. The result is dissatisfaction, as they begin to crave what they perceive others have while overlooking the blessings within their own relationship. Comparison also damages gratitude. Where there was once appreciation for a spouse's efforts, there is now disappointment. Acts of kindness go unnoticed, sacrifices are taken for granted, and love is measured against an unrealistic scale. A wife who once cherished her husband's small gestures now finds them inadequate compared to the grand romantic gestures she sees elsewhere. A husband who once admired his wife's dedication now feels frustrated that she does not meet the same standards as others. This lack of gratitude fosters entitlement, making one feel that they deserve more while giving less in return. The poison of comparison extends beyond material things and romantic gestures. It seeps into personality traits, communication styles, and even physical appearances. A husband may compare his wife's personality to that of a more outgoing woman, failing to appreciate the quiet strength she brings. A wife may compare her husband's communication to someone more expressive, ignoring the ways he shows love through action. The more one focuses on what their spouse lacks, the more they become blind to their unique strengths and contributions. Resentment is another consequence of unchecked comparison. When one partner believes they deserve better, they begin to hold their spouse responsible for their perceived unhappiness. If only they were different, I would be happier. This mindset shifts blame away from personal responsibility and onto the spouse, creating tension and emotional distance. Instead of working on the relationship, one partner begins to withdraw, either emotionally or physically, believing that fulfillment lies elsewhere. Comparison can also lead to emotional infidelity. When one constantly measures their spouse against another, they may develop admiration or attraction for someone else. It starts innocently, a coworker who listens more attentively, a friend who offers compliments, or an acquaintance who seems to have the qualities their spouse lacks. Over time, admiration turns into affection, and the mind begins to entertain dangerous thoughts. What if I were with someone like that? Emotional bonds develop outside the marriage, weakening the commitment within it. The dissatisfaction bred by comparison creates unnecessary pressure within a marriage. A spouse who feels inadequate in their partner's eyes may struggle with self-worth, always feeling as though they are falling short. A wife who constantly hears about what other women do better may begin to question her value. A husband who feels compared to more successful men may withdraw, believing he will never be enough. Instead of inspiring growth, comparison often leads to discouragement, insecurity, and a diminished sense of connection. Comparison also fosters an illusion that a better alternative exists. The grass always seems greener on the other side until one steps over and realizes it was just an illusion. Many who leave marriages in search of something better often find themselves facing the same struggles, realizing too late that no relationship is perfect. What seemed ideal from a distance turns out to have its own hidden flaws, and what was abandoned begins to look far more valuable in hindsight. The most tragic effect of comparison is that it steals contentment. A couple that once found joy in simple moments, a shared meal, a walk together, quiet conversations, now finds them lacking. They are no longer satisfied with what they have because they are too focused on what they believe they are missing. The desire for more, for different, for better, blinds them to the beauty of what they already possess. The poison of comparison is subtle but deadly. It does not destroy a marriage in an instant but weakens it over time, replacing appreciation with dissatisfaction, gratitude with entitlement, and commitment with longing for something else. The more one measures their spouse against an external standard, the less they see them as the person they vowed to love, honor, and cherish. Commitment is the foundation that holds a marriage together through every trial, every misunderstanding, and every season of change. When two individuals vow to love and honor one another, they are not promising to feel the same passion every day, nor are they guaranteeing a life without hardship. They are making a deliberate choice to stay, to persevere, and to build something lasting. But in modern times, this foundation is being eroded, not by one catastrophic event, but by a series of small compromises, cultural shifts, and dangerous mindsets that weaken the very essence of commitment. One of the first cracks in commitment comes through the belief that love should always feel effortless. Many enter marriage under the illusion that if they have chosen the right person, love will remain as intense and thrilling as it was in the beginning. But when difficulties arise, when routine sets in, or when affection seems to wane, they assume something is fundamentally broken. Instead of seeing these moments as part of the natural rhythm of relationships, they interpret them as signs that they are no longer in love. The truth is, commitment is not about the presence of constant emotion, but about the decision to nurture love even when emotions fluctuate. The erosion of commitment is also fueled by the glorification of personal happiness over responsibility. Modern culture encourages people to prioritize their own fulfillment above all else. If a marriage no longer serves them, if they feel unfulfilled or restless, they are told they owe it to themselves to walk away. The idea that relationships exist primarily for self-fulfillment weakens the sense of duty and sacrifice that true commitment requires. Marriage is not just about personal happiness, it is about building a life together, which sometimes means enduring discomfort for the sake of something greater. Another way commitment weakens is through the gradual neglect of small daily acts of love. In the early days of a relationship, couples go out of their way to express affection, appreciation, and care. But over time, as life becomes busy and routines take over, these gestures can fade. Compliments become rare. Kindness is taken for granted. Conversations become transactional rather than meaningful. Without realizing it, couples stop investing in their relationship, and what once felt unshakable begins to deteriorate. Commitment is not sustained by grand moments, but by the quiet, consistent efforts that keep love alive. Temptation plays a significant role in the erosion of commitment. Whether it comes in the form of an emotional connection with someone outside the marriage, the lure of an idealized past, or the fantasy of a different future, temptation thrives where commitment weakens. It begins subtly, a harmless flirtation, a growing admiration for someone else, or a lingering thought that life might be easier with another person. But the danger of temptation is that it blinds one to reality. It makes the familiar seem dull and the unknown seem exciting. If left unchecked, it leads to choices that damage trust, break vows, and destroy the foundation of the relationship. A lack of conflict resolution skills can also weaken commitment. Every marriage faces disagreements, misunderstandings, and moments of frustration. But how couples handle these conflicts determines whether their commitment strengthens or deteriorates. If problems are ignored, resentment builds. If arguments become battles where one must win and the other must lose, distance grows. Many couples fall into the habit of sweeping issues under the rug, believing that avoiding conflict is the same as maintaining peace. In reality, unresolved conflicts are like cracks in a dam, small at first, but over time they expand until the entire structure collapses. The modern world offers endless distractions that pull attention away from the marriage. Careers, social obligations, hobbies, and digital entertainment can all take precedence over time spent together. While these pursuits are not inherently harmful, they become dangerous when they replace genuine connection. A couple may still share a home, but they no longer share their hearts. They live parallel lives rather than an intertwined one. When quality time diminishes, emotional intimacy weakens, and the commitment that once felt unbreakable begins to feel optional. Unrealistic expectations about marriage also contribute to the erosion of commitment. Many enter marriage believing it will always be a source of joy, passion, and emotional security. When reality does not match their expectations, they feel disappointed, even betrayed. The truth is, every relationship experiences seasons of difficulty. There are times when love feels easy and times when it requires effort. The strongest marriages are not those that never struggle, but those that endure despite the struggles. Commitment is not about perfection, it is about persistence. Another factor that weakens commitment is external influences. Friends, family, and media often shape perceptions about what a marriage should look like. If a spouse constantly hears from others that they deserve better, that their partner is not good enough, or that they should not tolerate difficulties, they may begin to question their commitment. Advice that encourages leaving rather than working through problems can create doubt where there once was certainty. A strong marriage requires guarding against outside voices that do not have the best interest of the relationship in mind. The final and most dangerous stage of commitment erosion is emotional detachment. This does not happen overnight. It begins with small disappointments, unresolved conflicts, and unmet expectations. Over time, a spouse may start to withdraw, first emotionally, then physically. Conversations become surface level. Affection fades. The sense of us turns into me and you. Eventually, they may feel as though they are living with a stranger, even though they share the same space. This slow drift is one of the most painful ways a marriage can dissolve, because by the time it is fully realized, one or both partners may have already given up. Commitment is not just a promise made on a wedding day, it is a daily choice. It is choosing to stay, to fight for love, to forgive, to grow, and to invest even when it is difficult. The erosion of commitment does not happen suddenly, but through gradual neglect, unchecked dissatisfaction, and misplaced priorities. If not guarded, what was once a lifelong vow can turn into a temporary arrangement, easily discarded when challenges arise. The strongest marriages are not the ones that never struggle, but the ones that refuse to let struggle define them.